Among all hatchbacks on sale in the Indian car market today, there is one car that has not gone through a generation change in over 10 years, and despite that, the car is not outdated and can still hold a candle against its rivals. The Volkswagen Polo has now gone through yet another update, and that perhaps is one of the most major updates throughout its life cycle, as it gets a brand new powertrain and that promises a brand new driving experience. So has this hot hatchback managed to get even hotter? Well, it's time to find out. Now, as far as design is concerned, there's not much that has changed in this car because the Polo went through an update just a few months back. So from then to now, there are a few changes that have been made to this car, and that include the slightly updated grille. Of course, you have this new chrome strip here, so that's something new. On the sides, you get new side skirts, and at the rear, there's a Ford diffuser which now helps accentuate the sporty nature of the Polo. Once you're inside the cabin of this new Polo TSI, well, there aren't much changes, and basically the same cabin has been carried forward from the recently updated model. Now, that's not entirely a bad thing because the Polo is still one of the best built cars in its segment. So the build quality is perfect. The dashboard, again in an all black with some grey inserts, looks good, goes along well with the sporty theme of the car. Of course, you have this 6.5-inch touchscreen, a bit smaller than what you would find on some other cars in the segment, but it does its job well, has got a good interface and good touch response as well. You get a steering wheel which is adjustable for rake and reach, so that is again a good feature to have for a driver oriented vehicle. Beyond that, again, there are not much changes inside the cabin. The seats, the space, all of it remains the same. And talking about the seats, well, these are really good seats. The cushioning is ample and especially the side support is good, which you would need when you're going around corners fast. Compared to the older TSI with the 1.2 litre engine, of course there are bits which you will find missing. For example, there's no ESP. Now you have a manual gearbox, so the shift lever is different. So these are some things that are missing, and of course even in terms of rear parking aid, you do not have the camera, you only get rear parking sensors, which is kind of a miss for me, but still it's a small car, so parking the Polo is not really a tough task. Now, once you're inside the rear seat of the Polo, well, this is an area where its rivals have always had an edge over it and continue to do so because there is no change as far as space is concerned. Now, with the driver's seat adjusted to my driving preference, you can see I have just a little bit of legroom left, so that means if you are any taller than me and I'm 5 feet 8 inches, legroom would be a crunch. Headroom is not that bad, so yes, headroom is perfectly fine. The good thing here is that the seat itself is quite nice. You have a nice backrest angle, the cushioning is good, and again the under thigh support should be adequate for most people. So if you are someone who's not too tall, the seat should be okay, but if space is what you're looking for at the rear, the Polo is not the right car for you. In terms of comfort and utility, well, what you get here is rear AC vents, you get a cup holder and a 12-volt charging socket. Unfortunately, no USB charging slots, so that's a bit of a downer. Even if you look at the door pockets here at the rear, they are not wide enough to really accommodate the large bottles, so you can basically use them only to place in small stuff. So that is a bit of a miss, but like I said earlier, it's not space that is the forte of the Polo. It is something else, and that is precisely what we'll come to now. Now, the main reason why you will buy the new Polo TSI is if you love driving, and that is an area where the new Polo delivers in spades. Now, let's get the figures out of the way first, and as far as the engine is concerned, well, that's where the biggest change has happened. Now, the 1.2 litre from the earlier GT model, the 1.2 litre TSI unit has been done away with, and replacing it is this new 1 litre TSI motor. And despite the fact that it loses out on displacement, there is a minor bump in power, as a result of which now you get just about 109 horsepower, and torque remains unchanged. The other big change in the powertrain is the fact that while you had the DSG with the earlier model, now what you get here is a 6-speed manual gearbox, and that makes a world of a difference because driving enthusiasts had been waiting for a long time for a Polo TSI to come with a manual gearbox, and finally here it is. As far as the automatic option is concerned, the GT, which by the way hasn't hit the showrooms yet, but when it will come now with a 6-speed torque converter automatic gearbox, which means the sharpness of the TSG will be missed. But let's come back to the manual gearbox that we're driving here. Now the gearbox again is quite a nice unit, and it's got a very nice old school charm to it. So it is not as butter smooth as some of the other Japanese or Korean cars in this segment, but yes, you can get through the gearbox fast if you want, but it will take a little bit of time getting used to it because there is a bit of a notchiness to it. But again, that clunky feel gives you a good old school feel, and that goes well with the nature of this car. Now the biggest change in terms of driving performance here is the fact that unlike the DSG transmission, which did not allow you to get a full-on head start from stationary position, you can now do that with the manual gearbox. So whether you want to have a launch with your tires screeching or a perfect launch with good traction wherein you get good acceleration, it's all up to you. And as a result of that, the new Polo is faster in terms of acceleration than the outgoing model, and during our test run we were able to 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 10.02 seconds, making it now the fastest hatchback in its segment. The motor itself is quite nice, and in terms of power, well, there is a lot of power that you always have on tap. So well, once you are past about say 1100 or 1200 rpm, well, that is where the engine will respond to your throttle input, but again you do not get any surge of power. But once you're past 2000 rpm, that's exactly when the turbo spools in and you're shoved back into the seat, and that is where the fun begins. The motor revs cleanly till about a little under 6000 rpm, and that is precisely when you should change gears if you want optimum performance when you're pushing the car hard. As far as engine performance is concerned, great performance. It's an absolute racket to drive. The car is pure fun. So if you are looking for something that is pocket sized and will give you a big bang for your buck, there's nothing better in the market than this car right now. Now one thing where the engine doesn't really shine much is the fact that refinement levels are not as good as the older 1.2 liter motor, and that's primarily because this is a 3-cylinder motor, so that 3-cylinder hum is perceivable, especially when you start the motor and you're idling. That is when you can feel a bit of vibrations creeping through the pedals, and even when you're driving, probably when you're even pushing it to the red line, the motor doesn't really sound refined. It's a bit gruffy, but I kind of like it because it suits the nature of the car. It complements the positioning of the car, and I personally think that as you drive this car over a period of time, you'll eventually learn to love the sound of the engine. It's just loud, it's just there, it makes you feel you're going fast, and that's precisely what you want in a good driver's car. As far as ride and handling is concerned, no major change to the suspension. The setup remains like earlier, and it's slightly more inclined towards the stiffer side in favor of handling. So what that means is that as far as high speed handling is concerned, no problems at all. And if you want to go around corners at a fast speed, the Polo is pretty much the best car in its segment right now to attack corners. You've got great grip around the corners, and the torsional rigidity of this car is just spectacular. So as a result of that, you get great grip around the corners. You can actually go in a lot faster than many other cars in this segment. The grip from the tires also is good, and again the steering is quite a direct unit. There's not much feedback from it though, but again it's a direct steering. So what that means is that the Polo is pretty much a point and shoot affair as far as corners are concerned. The ride quality again is quite balanced, and I wouldn't really complain of it. So even if you're going at slow speeds over potholes, a bit of the shock does transfer inside the cabin, but it's not really uncomfortable. But once you gain momentum, the ride quality improves many folds, and that is where the Polo really shines, that is high speed performance. As far as safety is concerned, again, the Polo is one of the safest cars around. It's got a solid shell, and in terms of safety features too, it comes with dual airbags, ABS, and yes, of course, unlike the older TSI model, the ESP is no longer available with the manual gearbox. For some, that might be a downer, but I quite like the fact that this is completely more in control of the driver. That's precisely what I would want from a hot hatchback, wherein I have control over the car's performance and not some electronic nannies interfering every time now. So with this powertrain update, the Volkswagen Polo TSI is now undoubtedly a driver's delight and is indeed the best performance car in its segment. The Polo now is truly worthy of being called a hot hatch, which it has been for the last few years and is now even better. Now, what makes the entire package even more appealing is the fact that finally Volkswagen has managed to price an exciting Polo competitively, because this car can be yours for an ex-showroom price of about 7.9 lakh rupees, which is quite nice given the kind of features you get and the kind of great driving experience this car offers. So if you are someone who's out in the market looking for a hot hatchback and a true driver's delight, the Polo TSI is pretty much the only option, and a great option at a competitive price that you can go out and enjoy.